Hello everyone and welcome to my UDK tutorial series. In this particular episode I'm going to be going over decal actors. Now, decal actors are fantastic things. I found them whenever I was looking at one of the levels in the UDK example levels or whatever, and I was curious as to what they are, so I looked them up a little further, and they're very cool. Basically what it is it allows you to place any material that you create on top of any other material, and it sort of blends the two together in whatever spot you specify. So for instance, you could have like some kind of logo, or like dust stain, or like a blood splatter stain, or some sort of any sort of stain, or maybe vegetation, or if you want like a picture of some kind, and you can put it on a wall, a ceiling, a floor, any mesh or any other texture at all. You can just put it on there and sort of add more variety to that one texture. For example, this. So I know this is a lot of various wonky looking things, but basically what we have here is I've got various decal actors right here on this wall, and they're just applying themselves over the pre-existing textures, and they're blending with each other. These two are right next to each other, so they're just blending on top of one another. I can move them a little bit, and you can kind of see a little bit more clearly exactly what it is. And note that you can, at least with this one, you can sort of see the texture in the background. If I move it over to this one, it'll look differently, just because of the way the different textures are blending with each other and how they're designed. So, you know, different ones will look differently depending on the other texture that you put it on. They'll blend differently. But if I stick this about 90 degrees and stick it on the ground, now it's a lot more clear of sort of the exact kind of material that this is. So it's a very, very useful feature, because something like this, usually before I found out that this was a thing, I would just have to find a texture with this already in it. But now you can just have all kinds of different individual decal meshes that you can make, or not meshes, decal materials that you can make, and just stick them all over the place. And you can even combine them in some cases. So I could actually, you know, do this about 90 or so degrees that way, and stick it on top of this other one. And so now we got this wonky looking thing. They're combined with each other on top of another thing. So they're just all on top of each other. So it's really, really nifty, and you can do a lot with it. And again, you don't actually have to put it wholly on one texture. You can have them like across like that. Now obviously there's like a hole in the middle here. Just I didn't want to fiddle with having to scale them exactly so they'd fit right next to each other. They were doing like some texture flickering. So, but assuming that you had two textures or two meshes next to each other with different textures, then you can kind of just stick a decal mesh on top of this, and you know, it would be on top of two of them. So it can get very, very interesting, and I think it may be entirely possible to rotate this in such a way so as it's sticking. Yeah, so I've got this, it's kind of weird looking, but you can actually stick it so part of it is on the ground and part of it's on the wall. And if I could take this other one over here, no, not you, this one, and I lower it enough. Now they're sort of blending with each other. Obviously there's a weird cutoff, but you get the picture of all the different applications and uses that this thing can have. Now on to actually making them, because you do have to make them. So if I hit all assets here, and no, I need it there. Decal materials. These are all the ones that are basically, oh, not that one. That one I made myself, but these right here, and I think this one are all ones that are in UDK by default. There's not a lot to choose from, but they are custom made. Like this one right here has fancy effects to it to allow it to do the emissive sort of glowing thing that it has going for it. So this is sort of just proof that you don't have to stick just a single texture in there. You can use the entire material editor to create your own decal texture. I don't know much about the material editor. I can't exactly go into that at the moment. But basically, you can create your own entire thing. If you know how to animate it and all that stuff, you can animate it. Anything that can be done to a normal material can be done to a decal material, basically. So anyway, that's one thing. But you can use really anything you want to. This one is just a material stuck in the emissive section, and that's about it. And if I just drag and drop that in here, there you go. So now we just got like this little picture here. So, that can be really useful if you want to do, again, logos or maybe even paintings or posters or whatever you want, to just stick an entire image up there, and you're done. You don't even have to do any other stuff besides just sticking it in there. It's not even that hard. So that's a very useful aspect of this. But to make them, then to actually do them from scratch, all you need to do is just do a new decal material. And basically, you'll be welcomed by a screen similar to this one. Just drag whatever texture you want in here. Now, they have to be a texture. That's the important part. You cannot use materials because you're creating a new material, but it's specifically a decal material. So you have to start with all textures and stuff. So just drag the texture you want in here, and then just stick however you want to do it. Because this one, again, had some special configuring, but at any rate, the very end of it, something needs to be stuck into the emissive output. This one also had an opacity mask, but something has to be stuck into the emissive input really. But you're outputting it to the material, whatever. Something has to be stuck into the emissive slot at the end. Now, the various blending and lighting models you'll need to play around with to see what works exactly best for the material that you're using, because depending on whether or not you're using alphas or what the alpha settings are, you'll have to change it up to blend differently. So that's something you'll have to keep in mind. But this I just set to the way it is, because that's the way the tutorial said to do it if you're not using really much to do in the way of alphas, which this one isn't. So anyway, that's basically about it for creating the decal material itself. It's very simple, really. You just create the new decal material here, and then you just drag and drop all of the textures that you want to, and anything else that you want to do with the material, you can go ahead and do that. And then all you have to do is just drag and drop it in here. Now, if you go into actor classes and you go to the decal section, you'll see you have a decal actor, which is basically this thing. By dragging the decal material itself out into the world, it's automatically creating a decal actor for you that's preloaded with the decal material you had selected. But if you want, you can just drag a decal actor out here, and then it gives you this error message. So usually it's better to just drag a material out. It's a little easier that way. But you do have a decal actor movable that you can end up using as well. Oops. Almost knocked my microphone off. Anyway, you can use the decal actor movable if you want to be able to actually move the decal actor around the other texture you have. Now, this will be separate from any sort of animations that you have already on the material, already on the decal itself. So if you have animations on the decal material, those will be moving along with the entire decal itself. So if this image right here were moving or whatever, that would be different than it doing like this, which would essentially be what a decal actor movable would be doing. So there's an option for you if you wish. But other than that, we can go ahead and head into the actual options of the decal actor itself, because there are a couple. But after that, we'll be pretty much done, and it'll be a relatively short video compared to my others. So let's get through this. Now, these first few are sort of repetitions of what can already be done, because I can already go ahead and move this around, but if I switch through the widgets here, I can actually just rotate this, I can scale it if I want to, and all sorts of various things like that. So really a lot of this is sort of pointless, because the width and height can all be changed, as well as this tile X and Y, which is sort of scaling things. They can all be changed through the widget and the scaling and the rotation and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, if you want to enter manual numbers here for accuracy, go ahead. Now the offset is interesting. If I do something like 0.01, you'll notice it offset it just a hair. Part of it, well, let me do it a little bit more. 0.01, 0.1. So now it's offset a little bit more. Part of the image is just not there. And if I rotate this around, you can kind of see it sticking out a little bit there. So this can be sort of useful if you want to get some kind of interesting looking look or something, but really this just sort of offsets it in whatever direction, the X or the Y, that you so choose. And notice that there's no Z value, because again, this is only a 2D image. This is not 3D. So it's not going to be sticking out away from the wall. So if in fact you did want to make a painting out of this, it's not going to actually be sticking away from the wall somewhat like a painting would be, which is, you know, sitting inside of a frame, which is hanged on something on the wall, which it would be sticking away from the wall. So it's not preferable if you want to be doing really realistic, like a really realistic type world. But it's still an option for something, you know, like a poster or something. But you just need to keep in mind that these are 2D images, not 3D. But anyways, you can offset in whatever direction you wish. So I could offset, you know, like 1 there. So that knocks it almost completely from my view. So it's there if you wish to use it. I don't entirely see many applications for this, but it's an option. Now, the near and far plane are essentially, if you've messed with the fog at all in UDK, you kind of know what this is already. The near plane being the minimum distance you have to be before you can see this. The far plane being the farthest distance away you can be before it de-renders. So, you know, if I'm 301 units away, I cannot see this. If I am less than 0 units away, I can't see this, which is technically impossible, which is why 0 is going to be that there is no limit on the minimum value. But if I did set a limit, like 100, I would only be able to see this if I was between 100 and 300 units away from this decal actor. So, unfortunately, I would show an example of this by just moving the camera back and forth, but for some reason it doesn't want to actually show up very well in the editor. I don't know why, but it doesn't work very well doing that. It'll only work if I change the values manually, and then it'll just pop in and out of existence whenever I change the values. But moving the camera out in and out of the threshold that I set doesn't work for some reason. So I can't really show you that. No clip. According to the tooltip, this basically has some really big words and various elongated meanings, but essentially what this is if you set this to true, it'll render it faster, but it won't be as good looking, essentially. So this is sort of like a easy to hit checkbox for, do I want to render this really good and slower, or do I want to render it a little bit faster and it not look as good? Essentially that's what I take away from that. But anyway, now the decal renderer. This thing is confusing because I've messed with quite a few of the options in here in an effort to figure out what they do. And oh my gosh, this offset is driving me crazy. There. Okay. Anyway, for instance, the depth bias. The only thing this will do when you change the values is if you get to 0 or above. Basically, if it's a non-negative number, the entire decal just disappears entirely, and there's nothing I can do in adjusting the size or whatever that makes it come back. So a lot of these options I don't even know what they do. Now, sort order. Sort order is sort of the decal material version of CSG in that, well, in regards to the way additive and subtractive brushes work. An additive brush and a subtractive brush, when put together, work nicely, and you can make holes in the additive brush, but you have to make sure the order's correct. You have to add, then subtract. If you subtract first, you're subtracting from nothing, and then you're adding to everything, and it doesn't work. This is sort of similar, except it will work no matter what the number is, but it just sort of specifies the order in which things are rendered. So if you have a specific way you want the lighting to be, to like sort of affect this particular decal material, then you can render it in a certain order, and then the order of the rendering process is changed. This, would matter more if you're having to get very specific lighting effects, and perhaps that the decal material itself. I can't say words today. I apologize. The decal material itself has sort of like lighting associated with it or whatever. Then you may want to do some work with the sort order. Usually, you don't really have to worry about it much. It's going to handle most of that on its own, as well as all of these options. They're preset for specific reasons. Now, the decal filter, I've had some issue getting to work correctly, so unfortunately, I'm also not going to be able to show that correctly. But from what I've read and from what I've seen, basically you can filter the kinds of things that the decal editor will actually display on. So, for instance, I could drag this over here, and I've got it on 2 textures. It's on 2 individual, completely separate textures, the same static mesh, but on 2 textures, or materials in this case. I could actually set a filter so that, one of the materials will not show up on, but the other one it will show up on, or vice versa. So I can set the filter mode to, ignore or affect, and then I can just list the various materials I want it to ignore or affect. But unfortunately, it's not wanting to work correctly in that it keeps rejecting sort of the materials I give it, and it keeps replacing it with itself. If I show this, if I add this in here, and I just use whatever was in there, I hit the use as current selected object, and it's actually using the path of the decal actor itself. Now, if you're thinking maybe I just had that selected already, I'll run in here, grab any material. Let's say this. Or that. Sure, why not? Hit this. Still, it's the same exact thing. So if for some reason it's just replacing it with itself. I don't know why, but it's not wanting to work correctly. So I don't know what the deal with that is. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but from what I've read, that it's supposed to be able to filter it. So anyway, that's something. I don't know if that'll ever get fixed, but the receiver images, I honestly have no idea what that is. The tooltip is really no help. And since the filter mode's already not working, I didn't really bother trying to mess with that. Now, the rest of these checklists or checkboxes are self-explanatory. Do you want it to actually project on BSP at all, project on hidden textures or meshes or whatever, and so on and so forth. Pretty self-explanatory. And you can use these on terrain, so that is an important thing to note as well. These can be used on just raw terrain features. But anyway, moving on, we have the Decal component, basically, which is one option if you wanted to run at start time. So, pretty self-explanatory. And then we have more rendering options and lighting options, which are also self-explanatory and pretty much standard, I believe, for the actors. The lighting option, at least. I think the render option as well is pretty much standard for every actor. So, anyway, that is pretty much the lowdown on Decal actors. Hopefully, everything made sense. And I do apologize for the minor bugs that were present. You know, some of the things I wasn't able to show you, but I can't really help that. So, anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Although, I have a lot of work that I have to go to, so if I'm a couple days late on answering your comments, that is why I've been working. And it also explains why this video is coming out 2 weeks a little late. So again, I also apologize for that, but at any rate, it is coming out, so that is a good thing. Okay, yes, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in another video.